Oh boy, we are back into State of Decay Nightmare Zone, episode 43. Yes, we're back to the standard thumbnail. No, I'm not going to do a meme thumbnail every time. I have to be inspired by something in order to do that. Something's really got to just catch me and say, you need to do something really special this time. So yes, we are back to the mass production, low effort thumbnails that are easy to replicate. So what are we going to do today after the crazy Plagueguard episode? Well, we're going to go grab all of the rare weapons. Let me see, where is my... Double click my image. I have blown up the image of the weapons for Drucker County, the rare weapons. Looks like this guide says there are 13 of them. Maybe there are more. Depends on how accurate it is, and we're going to go look for them. In addition to that, we are going to do whatever quests that we find. I mean, I might put some of them off if it's those, like, zombie guys, because they don't seem particularly important. And also, they're pretty patient, too, so... We'll see. Ah, here's the champion. Our champion wrestler, Porter. Did a good job, didn't he? We're also going to be talking about today... the future of State of Decay 2, because that was actually a subject recently of an Undead Labs stream. I'm actually going to be rewatching it and making a dedicated video about it, but I'm going to start, thinking about it. I got to watch the whole thing a second time, because it showed up during a time I was much too busy to actually do anything. I was busy recording, and I had to get that done. But, I did watch some of it, and I will talk about what I listened to. There's this guy's weapon skill.
Yeah.
Sword. Let's do the Grillmeister. That's fine. Let's not get... Well, let's heal him real quick.
Your help is needed to locate a missing person. Please consider this a formal request for assistance.
Crap. I don't, maybe?
Looks like we have an infestation issue. I guess that's true in this area. There's one right next door, so let's go burn them. So anyways, yeah, so the future of State of Decay 2. I'm gonna listen to the stream again. I'll take notes this time, and then I will make a video. Seems appropriate. We'll basically talk about what is the future of State of Decay 2, not just from the perspective of the developers, though, from both my perspective and also what people have been saying down in the comments section, the community. As you know, I am more of a critic of State of Decay 2 than I am an advocate.
We actually erased the blood plague from our town. So what's next?
I forgot we actually need to celebrate.
I have a few ideas on that.
Let's go chat with these people. Some people may find that interesting, that, why am I a critic of the game and yet here I am playing it pretty much every day? Yeah, that's because... Let me just chat with these people. There you go.
We struggle today, so someone doesn't have to tomorrow.
Basically, why would I give a game such a low rating that I play on a daily basis? And that's because I think that State of Decay has deserved the criticism it gets. I think it is not unwarranted. But it also is a very unique game. And there aren't really a whole lot of games like it. So it scratches a particular itch. And that's actually a constant personality trait of mine. There are many games I have played that I would not consider to be very high quality. Another one is How to Survive. I would not consider How to Survive a particularly high quality game. But it was specifically the kind of game I would want to play. Looks like we're gonna have to just fight these guys. We can shoot a few of them. There we go. A little bit of distance. This is where having a silent weapon comes in handy. Is if you're shooting a regular gun, those additional guys, they would have heard it and they would want to come join the fun. And I don't want them to join the fun. Did that clean it? No, it didn't. Still got a few more.
Looks like we've whittled the infestations down pretty well.
I also am going to take a much more hardline answer on this, and so one of the problems that State of Decay has, and they acknowledge it, that it's a problem, is that the game is buggy. It's unacceptably buggy. Like, these bugs, they make the game feel like it's really cheap and shoddy. Like, there's no way around it, and I understand that game development is hard, but I also don't care that it's hard, and that's the hardline stance I'm going to take on it. There are many things in life that are hard, but some people are capable of getting it done and making an incredibly difficult project done, and done in a largely correct manner. But Undead Labs, they don't seem to be capable of doing this. They have left bugs in, like the vehicles getting haunted and just going crazy. They say that some of it has to do with that it's not an engine that they built, and perhaps that's true. Perhaps they should build their own engine then. But either way, the bugs are something that really, really hold the game back. I think it's way too buggy. And I think that there are bugs that have been in the game way too long. And there are other game companies out there who are capable of managing this a lot better than Undead Labs is doing. Now, people were more merciful with Undead Labs in the past. And that's because they were viewed as more of an indie game company. In fact, I think they technically are still an indie game company. But back in the day, they didn't have as much backing, they didn't have as much support. Now they've got Microsoft behind them. And also, this is their second game, so they've got more practice, they've got more experience. And yet, despite having more practice and experience, this game actually feels buggier than the previous game. I remember the bugs in State of Decay 1. Yes, you did have weird car, flip out of control car problems. Another problem you had was zombies getting trapped inside the geometry of buildings. But they were not as bad as the glitches and bugs that we have in State of Decay 2. Maybe it's because they changed game engines. Maybe this is a less effective game engine. Maybe it's a harder to use game engine, but either way, regardless of what the answer is, the condition is just not acceptable. So that's one of the first big problems with State of Decay 2. It is too buggy. The next problem with State of Decay 2 is the DLCs. They just don't cut it. Like Daybreak, I'll tell you right now, I think it's just objectively a bad DLC. I think it is basically the way to describe Daybreak is it's a DLC where you pay money to work at McDonald's. You basically pay $10, or you have the Ultimate Pass. You pay $10 to go in to do extremely repetitious work where your coworkers may or may not help or hinder you, but most of the time will probably hinder you. It's not enjoyable, and at the end of the day, you are given a miser quantity of money that was not worth the effort. I think that is the best way to describe. Oh man, what a throw!
But we could use a sheriff out here.
Be there in a bit.
Incredible throw.
Thanks.
Okay, we got that one. That should be enough for them. So let's start looking for the rare weapons. The first one is... Let me zoom out a little bit. Looks like it's somewhere around here, and the hint is it's under a bridge. Under a bridge in a small hideout. Yeah, like, so the two DLC they've released, Heartland is better than Daybreak. But that isn't saying much, because I think Daybreak is just a bad DLC. It didn't expand the game in a meaningful way. Like, it didn't add this end game mode. It didn't add weapons and equipment that were particularly interesting. The best things that it added were some of the facilities that are interesting, but the guns are largely bad. I would say the only gun that's actually good is the Clio Heavy Sniper, and that's because it's basically a 50 cal that is more ammo efficient. I guess we'll check out this quest while we're here. Oh wait, no, this is the main sheriff quest. We're gonna ignore that one. So the weapons are, for the most part, bad. And the weapons that are better, they're not really unique weapons. They don't really change the way you play the game. They're just weapons of higher quality. It's a DLC that's really poorly conceived in that it forces you to continuously play it just to continue funding the weapons. Like, you have this issue of... Ah, here it is. Here's our first special weapon. You have this issue where shooting the guns uses up Clio ammo, which forces you to go back in. We got an item we can trade, so not the best start. Although we do need the influence, so it could be worse. It's interesting how the crossbow bolts are knocking them over right now. All these guys, jeez. The next one is, oh man, kind of a weird order they have me going in. Approximately right here. The hint is in the gully campsite propped against a water reclaimer. Interesting. Yeah, so the rewards in Daybreak, they're just not very good. The best thing is probably a handful of the facilities, and the Red Talon characters are pretty strong. But overall, the game mode is just insufferably boring. That's the biggest crime of Daybreak. It's just an insufferably boring game mode with an awful rate of payout. Like, the payout that you get for the amount of time you have to play that game mode is on par with the just really, really stingy free-to-play games that want to milk you for microtransaction boosts, basically, to make the game more tolerable. So how do we get in there?
As if we all forgot that the powers that be, they only look after the powers that be. That's why the network says power to the people.
See if we can... Okay, it's probably right there. How do we get down there? This pathway looks like it could be a way down. For example, though, like, Warframe is a more generous game, and that's a free-to-play game. Like, you don't even have a buy-in. Whereas Daybreak, has a primary buy-in. You have to own State of Decay 2. And then a secondary buy-in. You have to have access to the Daybreak game mode. And Warframe is a more generous game. It's just unbelievable how stingy the Daybreak game mode is. So let's see if this is it.
Anyone listening, if y'all want to make some deals, come
This
on
is
by.
probably not it because... looks like it's a little more over here. Because if this were the location, the directions would be next to a crashed car. Let's keep going. But anyways, that's enough crapping on Daybreak. You know, it should come as a surprise that I'm not a fan of that game mode. I think it's a bad DLC. But the greater meaning of it, besides it not being a good DLC, is that you only get a few DLCs before, major DLCs, before they actually move on to the next game, State of Decay 3. And these DLCs are what you're supposed to be really excited for. They're supposed to really take the game in an awesome new direction. But they're not. They are falling short. And as I said, Heartland is a better DLC. But for starters, that isn't saying a whole lot. No, we've passed it. Okay, let me get out and deal with these enemies. Got this. I want to go on foot a little bit. Maybe we can get a better view of what we're looking for. Let me reread the hint. In the gully campsite, propped against a water reclaimer. In the gully campsite, is there a... Okay, so there wasn't a campsite that we revealed, and we would have revealed it if it was a landmark, because...
Don't give that screamer a chance to yell.
Oh, there's the screamer. Taking this really wonky path that I can't get a lock on. Let me see. It can't be over there. Yeah, this is out of bounds, so it can't be over there. Check the map again. Okay, so here's the road, and it says it's a little bit off to the side of the road. It's kind of where that bloater is, actually. That's where it's saying, so let's go back to the car and drive closer to there. We'll get on foot and start investigating. So anyways, the thing about Heartland is that I enjoyed Heartland. It was fun, but I also will say that it didn't really add anything new. It didn't really go that far. One of the things I was worried about is that even though they added these new Blood Plague enemies, I was like, in the end, I bet they're not really going to be meaningfully different, and I think I was proven right. And what I mean by that is, a Blood Plague Screamer is honestly not different than a Screamer. Yes, it has one new ability, and that ability barely does any damage. It has a chance to injure you, and it doesn't even cause much Blood Plague infection. It's just, it doesn't really matter that it has this new ability. It's not... Wait, let me double check this area real quick. This isn't what I would consider a campsite, but...
This is my last mag. Could be a problem later.
We got a... Here's where that bloater was. Okay, let's activate sniper support. Get this guy off. That's the closest thing we've got to a campsite so far. Oh, wait. We overshot it. Okay, here we go. Here's the campsite. Good thing we drove a little further. Okay, now we can actually look. We're looking for a water reclaimer. I'm guessing it's this. The hint was it's propped up against the water reclaimer, so it should be leaning against it. Oh, maybe there's a secondary one. Oh, here it is. This is the water reclaimer? Whatever, we found it. That's the important part. We found it.
Do you need more of these?
Oh my, shots of espresso. Man, we are on a roll. Just some high quality stuff we're finding here. But yeah, a lot of people were disappointed by Heartland because what people really wanted and what we were delivered was not the same thing. What people wanted, and here's the thing, Undead Labs knew, they said that they knew people wanted this. And what people wanted was a new map. A new map where your community could go to it. And Undead Labs knew that that's what people wanted. And instead we got Heartland. Now, they've made it seem like it might be possible for them to make Heartland open to actually being migrated into. They hinted towards that. But I don't understand why that wasn't something they had already done. I don't understand why they made Heartland this kind of standalone adventure where the only impact it has on your community is if you transfer some of the weapons out of it, which requires 2 people. So it's not even convenient to transfer your community members out of it. In addition to that, as I said, the Blood Plague variant enemies, are they really different from a standard enemy? And is it the Blood Plague that's relevant to them? Like, it doesn't really matter that a Blood Plague Screamer is a Blood Plague Screamer. It's still just a Screamer. A Blood Plague Bloater, it's just a Plague Bloater. It's just a bloater. There's really nothing different about it. The Blood Plague Feral is different, but it's not because of Blood Plague. It's because he's basically got a helmet on. What is a Blood Plague Feral? It's essentially a SWAT Feral or an Army Feral. It's essentially a Feral that has a helmet. That's what makes him different. He's not different because he has Blood Plague. The Blood Plague infection that he gives you is pretty low. What makes him different is that he's got a helmet on. And as a result, it takes more effort to shoot him to death. He doesn't hear. The number 3 is on top of a large guard tower inside of a military post. That must be this. Oh, here's the military post. I think we're far enough away from the enemies that we can just run. It must be that right there.
Okay, moving along. Nothing to see here.
Okay, never mind. There's multiple guard towers, so we'll have to check them all out. Okay, there's 4 of them in total. What I wonder is why aren't one of these a home base location? Like an abandoned military post seems like it would be a pretty good place to create a base. Wait, was that it? No.
I'm sorry you can't feel that.
Which means it's probably that one there. All these nosy guys coming in. Another problem with Heartland is that it didn't really add much of a story. Like, the story is that you learn that maybe the government is behind the Blood Plague plot, possibly. Hasn't been absolutely confirmed, but it does seem to be hinting towards that. Okay, let me reread it. On top of a large guard tower inside... Oh, it's been preluded. I see. So we found number 3, or at least we confirmed the location of number 3. Number 4 is kind of over here-ish. In addition to that, the characters, they don't have an interesting story because, 1, their dialogue ends very quickly, and 2, they don't stay with you for very long. The characters in State of Decay 1, although extremely basic, they are with you for the entire State of Decay 1 experience unless one of them dies. And as a result, even though they are really basic characters, they still feel like they have more of a personality because they are with you for a long time. And in Breakdown, one of the characters who probably does become more endearing is Lily Ritter because she is the one consistent character throughout both the standard game and State of Decay 1 Breakdown. And as a result, you just spend a large amount of time with them. So we're looking for a campsite propped up on a water reclaimer. What? Another one? Okay, so first we wanted to discover a campsite. Possibly this location here. Is pretty campsite-y looking. And I'm guessing it'll be right up against that. Oh, he's gonna get to me in time. So the thing is that Heartland, basically, as far as the DLC goes, it fails on pretty much everything that it said it would deliver on. It didn't deliver this, like, awesome map because, oh, we got the Gangland Strad. I think we already had that one. Oh, I got to reload my ammo, though. It didn't deliver this awesome map because you can't do anything with it. Let's go drop off over here. Plus, the number 5 is actually pretty close to there. So it didn't deliver on that. It didn't deliver on this story. The only time a story really has anything to do with anything is at the very end. You basically learn 2 things. You learn about the plague walls, and then you learn about the government possibly having something to do with the outbreak. The characters have extremely basic stories, and the experience is over so soon that you're not really going to gain an attachment for any of the characters because the story is over too quickly, and you don't spend enough time with them. And it's very basic. So all of the major DLCs for State of Decay have really been, I would call them, flops. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the DLC has been bad for State of Decay. There have been some good ones. For example, Zed Hunter, that's a better DLC than a lot of the stuff they did because it actually added gameplay mechanics that are interesting. The Zed Hunter crossbows, for example, they completely change up the game. One, they play in a very different way. They've got the projectile time. They've got bullet drop. They are very steady. Like if I do this, you'll see that my crosshair has no sway. There's no sway at all. Yeah, there's a little bit of sway. Very, very tiny amount of sway. Whereas guns have, oh, quite a bit of sway. So crossbows play differently in terms of gameplay style. Crossbows also, where's number 5 at? On top of a water tower lookout. Okay, it must be this here. On top of the 10,000 gallon hat, makes sense. Because it's such a big landmark. In addition to that, the crossbows use your material supply instead of your ammo supply. And then the bolts can be recovered. So they change your economics up. They change the way you manage your resources. They increase the value of the resourcefulness skill because it increases the rate at which you recover the crossbow bolts. And then lastly, they are 100% silent. They also have the different reloading mechanics. So they have cons, they have pros, and they have cons. And that's what made the crossbows an interesting addition to the game. I know somebody heard that. Yep, somebody heard it. There's also the Zed Hunter biochems. And you may wonder, like, what does this have to do with the future of State of Decay? Like, what does this have to do with the stream? Right now, I want to talk about what they have done so far. And then I want to contrast that to what they're planning to do. Okay, this is the side you climb up. Is it on top of it? Yes, on top of the water tower. So, the biochemical items, they changed the way you play the game. They gave a greater value to, what do you call it, the plague samples, which I thought was a good idea. Here it is. What do we get? And as you see, the scent block and the bloater cloud grenades, and the zombie. We got the steel mace and a Willie Pete grenade. But they are interesting additions to the game that actually cause you to play differently, and they're free. You didn't pay for it, so the paid DLCs, they are less creative. They add less interesting items to the game, but you have to pay for them. And yet Zed Hunter added more meaningful content to the game, and it was free. Number 6 is here, and it says it's in a gully off the road on a table. So far, these items haven't been as annoying to find, but we're only about halfway through it, so there's time for them to be more annoying. Don't worry. Another good update was the Nightmare Zone update, and that's because this is a survival game, and one of the most important things in a survival game is pressure. The base game of State of Decay 2 is a joke. There is no pressure at all in State of Decay 2. Now, some people are having trouble with it, but that's because they are likely new to survival games. They're probably unfamiliar with the genre, and so their skills from other games, they don't transfer as well into it, so that's understandable. But this is the sequel to State of Decay 1, so you would think that they would want to cater more towards the crowd that understands how to play. At least that's what I would think, because this is the sequel to the game. But State of Decay 2, I would say, is actually easier than State of Decay 1. I think it's actually a regression in that regard. And people have said that it was done to cater towards the newer audience, and that's probably true. But you cater towards your newer audience in expense of the older audience. That's why you get a lot of comments that are like, man, State of Decay was so boring. You played for 2 hours and it's basically the same thing. That's a very short comment. It doesn't tell you very much, but you can extrapolate what he's trying to say. And what he's trying to say is that the game was too shallow. But number 7 is about right here. Oh, it's in the hospital. Okay. Or at least I think it's in the hospital based on its location. Let's see what the hint says. It's behind the hospital. Okay. So those are the mistakes I think they've been making in State of Decay. To recap, because obviously I can't keep my thoughts consistent since I'm also playing, the glitches are not acceptable. The game is too buggy. I don't think this is the correct way. I think I need to turn around, but I want to get some distance on that feral. Yes, we want to turn around. Let's stop back at home base and swap characters. So that's 1. Glitches. It's too glitchy. 2. DLCs are not delivering on either of the things that Undead Labs say that it's going to deliver on. It doesn't deliver on that, and it also doesn't meet player expectations. And I don't think player expectations are too high. I don't think the players are being unreasonable when they say that they want a 4th map. Like, I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to want. And also, Undead Labs is aware of it. I also think that their DLCs are like Daybreak. It's a very greedy, stingy DLC. It's something that they could change. It's something that they could adjust, but they don't. So what did they say that they were going to change in the stream? Well, first thing they said is that they're going to be adding new weapons, and from what I gathered, they're going to be themed after equipment that a first responder would have. So basically, police, EMTs, firemen, stuff like that. And there's a very high chance, this is not certain, but interpreting with this, there is a high chance that these are just going to be more of the same. And by that I mean, these are not going to be interesting weapons that have very different play styles. They're not going to be like the crossbows. They're not going to be adding stuff like the Z-Hunter biochem items. They're not going to be things that change the way you play the game. They're just going to be... You see all these weapons in here? Most of these weapons are just guns with different names. Like these pistols and whatnot, these rifles, they are just guns with different names. Like most of these weapons are not meaningfully different from each other. Also, these melee weapons. You see these crowbars and the maces and like all these bladed weapons. For the most part, they are just different weapons with different names, and their stats are, for the most part, meaningless. And that's a problem. They're adding weapons that don't matter. They're fluff. They're adding fluff content into the game. And that would be fine for a game like Borderlands, where just getting more loot, that's a big part of the game. That would be fine. Actually, that wouldn't be fine in a game like Warframe. Warframe does not add fluff weapons into the game. They usually add weapons that are quite a bit different, and they change their playstyle. So these are not things that State of Decay 2 needs. State of Decay 2 does not need fluff weapons. Now, their argument for it is that it is a role-playing kind of thing, you know, so that you can role-play being a...
I'm sorry to bother you, but we could use a sheriff out here.
Here we go. They're arguing that it's from a role-playing perspective, that it's there so that you can, like, create more of a character you want, and I don't really believe this because you can't customize the appearances of your characters. If you wanted your character to be themed after a police officer, then the first thing you would want is to wear a police officer's outfit. For example, in Resident Evil, one of the easiest ways you could tell that Leon Kennedy in Resident Evil 2 is a police officer is because he's got a police officer's outfit. Now, people could argue that, well, maybe you lost it because this game has taken place after the outbreak. I would say, one, that's irrelevant. I think it's more important that you can look the way you want than plausible realism. And two, even if we want to go for the perspective that maybe he lost his outfit, I would say that if you could find full arsenals of weapons, ammunition, grenades, and whatnot at a police station, then you could find an outfit for a police officer at a police station. We need to take this left up here. So I don't really buy it that, like, oh, it's here because for role-playing purposes. I think they're adding more weapons into the game because it's just a low-effort thing they can do that breathes some kind of energy into the game. I think that's the real reason they're doing it. They're just... I think the World War II weapons, they said it was because it was a labor of love. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I bet a lot of it had to do with the fact that it wasn't hard to do. It didn't take a ton of effort to do compared to adding in things of a greater complexity. But that's what the game needs. The game doesn't need It might sound really mean to say this, but the game doesn't need labors of love that don't add real content, like content that really changes up the game and increases the complexity of the simulation, even if it is a labor of love. Like, that's not currently what State of Decay needs. What State of Decay needs are new ways to play the game, and new ways for the game to play you. We need new kinds of threats, new types of environments, and new ways to adapt to those threats, new ways to adapt to those kinds of environments. That's what State of Decay really needs, and neither the DLL... When they say behind the hospital, they could mean on the on this risen platform. Or they could mean down here. Or they could mean near this gazebo. Okay. What is our hint? Behind the hospital. That is our hint. Nothing further than that. But behind the hospital could be in this little dumpster area. Behind the hospital could be... We just know it's not in the hospital. If they said it was that would be a much more specific bit of direction, would be in the hospital. Maybe it's behind the hospital, including the premises, so maybe it's actually behind the wall.
Gotta catch my breath.
These directions could be a little more specific. Seems like it's kind of right here-ish. Oh, that looks like kind of steep. Actually, seems like it's a little more like right here-ish. I'm gonna trust what it's saying in that it's behind the hospital, so let's... I really don't want to have to go down into, like, that valley area. Like, behind the hospital, that's such a... I mean, it's on one hand kind of specific, but on the other hand... The hospital is so... Oh, here it is. So that was... So the problem... Why couldn't I find it? Because I was looking for a flashing item. I need to remember that they can be pre-looted. Okay, so number 8 is in town around here. The hint is on top of 3-story office building on a ledge. Which means it's probably more in this area. Speaking of customizations, that's something that State of Decay really lacks in. not just the ability that you can't really change your character, but there's just a lot of things they're missing, like things that are really common to people, mainly like beards and whatnot. For some reason, I think they've said it, that they can't do beards. Which, like, really puzzles me that they can't do beards. Yeah, I'm not a game developer. So, like, I don't know the reason why. However, I find it to be extremely puzzling that they can't do beards. Indeed, I believe the only person who had a beard in State of Decay 1 was Sasquatch.
Well, better move on.
Nothing at 8. 9 is somewhere around here. The hint is makeshift fort campsite along the narrow path. This is the narrow path here. All right, no, there's probably a dirt road or something. So overall, when they talk about the future of State of Decay, I'm not liking the answers they're talking about. They're not talking about the keyword things like greater complexity, new enemies, new regions, new places to go to, new ways to interact with the game, and new ways for the game to push back against you. They also answer some community requests, and I think in a kind of ridiculous manner. For example, people have said that they wanted rain, and apparently the sound department said that, well, you know, they would have to, you know, retexture all the surfaces and record the sound of rain pitter-pattering on, like, all kinds of different surfaces on the ground, on the concrete. Ah, damn. He was right in front of me. And basically they're saying that it would be the amount of effort it would take to do rain. But, you know, this is going to sound really mean. But that would be implying high amounts of effort. You know, retexturing unique wet concrete, wet earth, wet chrome, wet vehicles. I don't think anyone is expecting that kind of effort out of State of Decay. I think they're literally just expecting, like, make the sky get darker and make water fall from the sky and just put, like, rain that has different volumes depending on if you're indoors or outdoors. I mean, look at what Anthem's doing. Their interpretation of rain is putting on a gray-blue filter over the game and playing some, like, windy sounds and some thunder in the background. So, like, I don't think it would require the kind of effort that they're talking about. And also, the devs, they don't put that kind of meticulous detail into the game that they are implying. So I think that was an evasive way to answer that question. But that's what they talked about. Like, I didn't listen to the whole thing, so I don't remember the entire... Well, not only do I not remember, but I also was not keyed in on all the stuff they talked about. I'm going to, you know, listen to it. I'll take notes. You've gotten a preview of it, so you can expect that when I do release it, it is going to be a generally negative take on what they've been doing. Like, overall, I'm not impressed with how Undead Labs is managing State of Decay 2. And I would like to see higher quality content. That's what I would like to see. Like, I don't want to see more weapons that are basically more of the same thing. If we want to see a new map that we can actually play in, and we want new ways to interact with the game. We want new interesting facilities, new interesting enemies, new interesting tools to overcome these new interesting enemies. That's what people want. And there are other games out there that are more complicated than State of Decay, I might add. If we look at Clay, for example, they make Don't Starve and Oxygen Not Included. Graphically simpler, yes, but mechanically much more complex in terms of gameplay mechanics. And that's what they do. Yes, they do have some fluff content. For example, Don't Starve. They do add skins, things that don't change the way you play the game. But they also add in new environments with new enemies, strange enemies that you haven't dealt with before, and new tools that you can get to help adapt and overcome those new enemies. Which is perfect. That's exactly what a survival game like Don't Starve and Oxygen Not Included needs. And yes, they're not zombie survival games. They're not even third-person action survival games. But that's okay, because the primary thing that State of Decay is a zombie simulation. And as a result, the main ways they should be changing the game is to deepen the complexity of the simulation and to polish the simulation. So it might be at this camp right here. It's at a makeshift fort along a narrow path. Being really dark is not helping. Since I'm looking for landmarks, let's check this outcropping. Oh, it's really rocky and mountainous here, which is annoying. The probability of getting stuck is pretty good. I kinda wanna just get back on the road. This is a good opportunity for the zombies to, like, you're playing Nightmare Zone. Time to spawn in, 3 ferals. Okay. Get out of the car and deal with this guy. Ah, I should have dodged instead of swung. That was a lot of enemies. One of them must have shouted. I think what we're going to do is just head back to base because we're 53 minutes into the episode. And what I'm probably going to do is just wait until daytime for the next episode. Because it's just extremely hard to find anything at night. Or at least, it's hard to find landmarks that are not labeled on the map. Is this the way I get? No, this is not. I need to take the major road. And that's really the problem there, is that when you're looking for landmarks and it's nighttime, and the landmarks are not something that's actually physically on the UI map, it's just not going to happen at night. I'm a little upset that we got a duplicate. We got another one of the Gangland Strad. Like, of all the rare weapons, somehow we get a duplicate. That would be just my luck. Okay, how do we get over there? Take over here, then we take a simple right, and that'll be that. So this might be a more controversial episode, since, like I said, I'm not just going to criticize Undead Labs. I am going to take a fairly hardline stance on it. But I think somebody has to. Like, we can't all be positive all the time, especially if there are things that are worth being negative about. Especially if the things worth being negative about are exceeding the things that are worth being positive about. That said, obviously I do play the game. I'm not bored of the game. I still have fun recording and playing the game. But it's not because of the DLCs. It's not because of Heartland. It's not because of Daybreak. It's because of a select few really good updates, like the Zed Hunter update and the Nightmare Zone update. Those are really exceptional updates. They were the most transformative updates that really made the game better. So, although I was really critical of them, let me make sure that I do say something positive, and not forcibly positive. I'm not going to force myself to say something positive. That's something I genuinely believe, is that the Zed Hunter update and the Nightmare Zone update, both free updates, I might add, were of very beneficial quality to the health of the game. And we need to see more updates like Zed Hunter, more updates like, I can't even think of it, Nightmare Zone. Here's what I mean. I would have preferred to have paid $20 to $30 for Heartland if it was like a full-sized expansion to the game. In fact, I would say I didn't want a $10 add-on. I want a meteor expansion from the game. I want to pay more money for a big chunk of transformative content. That's how I felt about Heartland. And when I review Heartland, we will talk about it in greater detail. And as I said, I am going to re-listen to the Undead Labs stream. I'll take some notes, and we will go over this again without the game distracting me. Apologies if being negative kind of soured some of the video, but I think it was worth talking about because of the stream specifically was about the future of State of Decay 2. Let me know down in the comment sections what you think, if I'm being too harsh. Maybe you think I'm being too easy on them. I'm sure some of you will think that if I'm not taking enough of a hardline stance on Undead Labs, but let me know what you think down in the comment section. Like this video if it was more informative than entertaining. Subscribe for future State of Decay 2 content. Stay tuned for the reaction to the future State of Decay live stream. And then, of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.